Hey guys, my name is Al, and welcome to our fourth sprint review. Today I'll be talking about our different user stories and our items in our prioritized product backlog for our fourth sprint, and also be talking about what we were able to accomplish during our fourth sprint, and we'll also touch up on our progress in terms of whether or not we met our acceptance criteria and our overall project progress as well. And finally, we'll talk about whether or not we achieved our our sprint goal for our final sprint. So let's go ahead and get started. So our first item in our prioritized product sprint backlog was to implement modify/view Picklist on our request selection criteria. So to demonstrate that, I'm just going to log in and hold on, I'll pause this so we can save time. So I'm logged in as the administrative user, Hank Schrader, as we've been using for our past sprint reviews. I'm going to log in into our application. And what I'm going to do is make a request, submit a request here, create a request, and this is what we had implemented for that item in our prioritized sprint backlog. Essentially, what we have missed in our previous sprint was to implement like that pick list where they should be able to select modifier or view. So we already have that here, and that's one thing that we were able to achieve for our fourth sprint. So essentially, the acceptance criteria was simply for them to be able to select modifier or view when they're submitting a ticket. So I'm just going to go ahead and submit this ticket right here. Ahead and filled that out. I just went ahead and fill that out for time's sake, and I'm going to confirm that. So again, here's our confirmation. We have the approval history on that end, and to submit it, I'm just going to click this arrow right here and hit submit for approval. And I don't want to waste too much time for that, but as you can see, approval history is down here. Submitted for pending approval. It's going to be set to the data steward, and we have what status is and what what's available and what stage that the current ticket is at. And as you can see, that acceptance criteria is met by implementing that pick list with either view or modify. For this example, we wanted to hit view, and that satisfies that first item. Now moving on to our next. So the next item in our fourth sprint backlog was to update multiple requests at once. So to demonstrate that, I'll go ahead and acknowledge that we already have this one here. I'm just going to go ahead and make another request so that we can demonstrate that the data steward is able to update multiple requests at once. So I'm just going to pause and fill it out. So I just filled that out. Made another ticket request, sprint 4 test 1. They want to be able to modify whatever they want to do, and I'm going to submit that for approval. Hank is going to submit that for approval, and it's going to send it over to our data steward. Our data steward is Skylar White. So I'm going to go ahead and log into Skylar's view for the system, and I'll demonstrate this user story. So I just logged in as Skylar White. Skylar White just received 2 emails on her end about the request from Hank. So as you can see, she did receive 2 notifications. One was from earlier. But let's just go ahead and see this tab right here where she could track all of her access requests. Right here we can see sprint 4 test and sprint 4 test 1. Those were the 2 tickets that we decided to submit. And essentially that satisfies those acceptance criteria. So if she wanted to accept both of those, she could go over here and find that ticket and approve. I'm going to approve that first one. And I'm going to do the same for the other. So you can go here. Where'd it go? Sprint test 1. Approve. So that satisfies that acceptance criteria for that item. And moving on to the next. So our next item in the backlog was to allow multiple users to submit requests. To demonstrate that, essentially how our process would go is that the Salesforce administrator would go to settings, and they would go to users, and they would have to enter in any new users that they wanted to use the system. So as you can see, you hit new user or you can add multiple users and they can add those users. These are currently our current users for our system. We have Jesse Pinkman, Hank Schrader, Skylar White, and some others. So that satisfies that requests, that satisfies that acceptance criteria. And finally, one of our last few items on the products on the Sprint 4 prioritized product backlog was to complete our user interface design. Sorry about that, but essentially what you can see here is I made some changes to the navigation tabs, and we have a little bit of points on how to navigate through this through the system. And if I'm logged in as Hank Schrader, then give me 1 second to log into it. If I'm logged in as Hank Schrader, he has just a better overall sense of where to navigate. So to make a request, start by clicking make a request on navigation above. I would say that the acceptance criteria for this item is partially met because we did have some initial ideas for our user interface that we wanted to achieve, but for time's sake, we were only able to achieve the base standard for the time that we were given. But we do plan on using some of that grace period that we have until our presentation to do some finishing touches for our user interface. But essentially what we have is right here for our user interface, and I would say this puts us in a good position for wrapping up our system development. And to wrap this up, we do plan on touching up more on our user interface prior to our final project presentation. So thank you so much for listening to the sprint and looking forward to our final presentation.